Welcome to the Planning Applications Committee meeting of the Thursday, the 17th of July. It's going 10:30 and we are quoted. Can you take us through the Sederunt and apologies, please, Gillian?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we are quoted. We have apologies this morning from Councillor Peter Diggle and Councillor Alistair Witts.
Thanks, Gillian. Declarations of interest, members? Councillor Dick, Councillor Maitland, Councillor Gilroy, Councillor Geddes.
Thanks, Chair. In relation to item 5, I have expressed opinions in favour of that development and therefore don't deem it appropriate that I sit on the committee for that item.
Thanks, Councillor Dick. Councillor Maitland.
Item 7, Chairman, I'm the owner of the property in question. I will leave the room.
Thank you, Councillor Maitland. Councillor Gilroy.
Thank you. I have relations who have both supported and objected to item 4, so I will have to leave.
Thank you, Councillor Geddes.
I've had discussions, sir, with various, in relation to item 5, Chair, discussions with various people whom I now see, in fact, are among the list of formal objectors in relation to this particular application. So, albeit somewhat in balance, I will err on the side of caution and declare an interest in relation to that.
Thanks, Councillor Geddes. Councillor McCaughey.
Just to enter some more apologies, Chairman. Councillor Blake, Councillor Dryborough and Councillor Ogilvie.
Thanks for that, Councillor McCaughey. Any other declarations of interest? Okay, can you take us through the procedure for today, Gillian, please?
Thank you, Chair. The Planning Applications Committee will consider each application in turn as detailed on the agenda. The case officer or other appointed officer will make a short presentation addressing the determining issues accompanied by digital images. Any late information, amendments or corrections will be reported at this time. Members may ask questions of officers following the presentation on points of clarification. The Chairman has been provided with a list of eligible representatives who have been registered to speak at this meeting within the period specified in Council policy. No other persons will be allowed to speak. The Chairman will individually invite those who have registered in advance to make their representation, after which they may be questioned by committee members. The order of eligible parties being heard will be as follows: third parties objecting to an application, third parties supporting an application, statutory consultees objecting to an application, elected members of Dumfries and Galloway Council who are not members of the Planning Applications Committee, and then applicants or their agents. Representatives have been placed in alphabetical order and a copy of the public speaking list is available from the committee officer taking notes of our proceedings today. Presentations will be strictly limited to 3 minutes per person. The Chairman of the committee will ask you to come to a conclusion if you take too long. Representatives are encouraged to use the time allotted to clarify any points they consider material and address the determining issues. Certain matters are not normally material planning considerations and will not be taken into account by the Council when deciding on a planning application. Representatives should not raise any new matters without explaining why they were not raised earlier with the case officer. Please do not repeat what is in the report, as members will have already read the report. After all the representations have been heard, the meeting is then in formal session and no members of the public may address the committee from the public gallery. The Planning Applications Committee will then proceed to determine the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Gillian. Can I just remind everyone present that this meeting will be recorded and that the recording will subsequently be made available for public listening. Councillor Hislop.
Chair, it's in light of the fact that last Wednesday, I think it was, we had full council and we took a decision with regard to the upcoming local development plan. It's now, my understanding, moved to a significant material consideration. Does that have any effect on any of the papers and is it reflected within the papers today?
David, can you respond to that, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, obviously that decision was taken after the papers were written, but nonetheless, the reports do make it clear about the status of the proposed LDP, and wherever there are policies which would be at variance, that's highlighted. I'm unaware of any applications today which that would apply to. But it is now in the situation where we are giving significant considerable weight to the proposed LDP.
Thanks, David. Okay. In that case, we now come to the minute of the meeting of 25th of June 2014. Councillor Dick.
In relation to item 6, I've passed copies of an email regarding the minutes of that item to Mr Sutty. I just want clarification on the accuracy or otherwise of the minute in view of that email.
Thanks for that, Ian. Gillian?
Thank you, Councillor Dick. Yes, I have looked at the email. In relation to the position detailed by Mr Clapworthy, the planning officer, this was just a point of clarification. It wasn't a correction, therefore it wouldn't be detailed in the minute. And in relation to the second point, which was the amendment for that item, it was the amendment that was detailed and noted and taken votes on at the time, therefore it was satisfactory.
Happy with that, Councillor Dick? Okay. If that's the case, are members satisfied this is a true and accurate record of the minute? Thank you. Okay. We come now to item number 4, Barcloy Hill. And before I even introduce this matter, David has a request from the applicant that members might want to hear. David?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we've had a request from the applicant, Mr John Appleton, on behalf of RES, where he is pointing out the fact that he thinks that there's a strong likelihood that the NATS objection could be overcome. That, you'll notice, is the third of the 3 reasons for refusal that are being recommended. Accordingly, he is requesting that the committee defer the application to allow sufficient time to resolve the NATS objection. That's because it's on the papers. It's now actually over to yourselves as a committee to decide if you wish to agree to that. I would recommend that you do continue to consider the application today, simply because that is only the third of 3 reasons, and we would not be changing our recommendation on the first 2, even if the NATS objection could be resolved.
So we have a request to defer officer recommendation. We do consider. What's the opinion of members? Councillor Geddes?
I would certainly support Mr Sutty's recommendation, sir. What may or may not happen in relation to the NATS objection is speculative, ultimately, at this moment in time, in my view. So I would suggest we proceed as accords today, sir.
Thanks for that. Councillor McKee?
Quite happy to second that, Chair.
Any other member otherwise minded? In that case, we will proceed to hear the application before us today. Councillor Garoy is about to leave the room. Item number 4, Barcloy Hill, Kirkcudbright, NGR 274251 553330, NGR 274219 552915, NGR 274271 552522, NGR 274420 552167, NGR 274759 551921. Planning application for erection of 5 wind turbines of maximum blade tip height of 115 metres and associated access track infrastructure and ancillary development, including a substation, permanent, for the life of the development, and temporary anemometer masts, temporary construction compounds, and a network of underground cables. Judith is the senior planner, and Judith will take us through the presentation. Thanks, Judith.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd just like to point out one small error in the report at paragraph 4.33. The last sentence there, it says there are 27 occupied residential properties within 3 kilometres of the nearest proposed turbine. That should say 2. Instead of 3 kilometres, it should say 2 kilometres. Another thing I'd like to point out is that there was some ambiguity as to whether the archaeologist was recommending objection to the proposal or not. We have subsequently received an email which confirmed a telephone call which categorically states that she was not recommending objection to the proposal. Moving on to the slides, this is the location plan. The site is to the southeast of the B727, which is the road that links Gelston to Kirkcudbright. The site's located on the southern slopes of a hill range, which includes Screel and Ben Gairn Hills. The site's approximately 8 kilometres from Castle Douglas and 4.5 kilometres from Kirkcudbright. This is a closer-in view of the site. You can see the B727 running along the corner, the top corner of the plan, and to the south-west of the site is the U51. I think I'm just out with the range here to point it out, unfortunately. To the southwest of the site is the U51, which is a single-track road. The B727 is a more major road, which is the one that the access would be taken from. I've got images later on of the site from the B727. The site itself is situated on the boundary of two landscape character types. That is the Dundrennan unit of the peninsula character type and the Ben Gairn unit of the coastal granite uplands, although the turbines themselves would be within the coastal granite uplands landscape. Moving on, this is a detailed plan. The turbines, you can see the 5 turbines are located in a north to south direction. The access is at the top from. There are four alternative accesses. 3 of them would be from the north, which includes the most likely access route, which would take the access in as shown along the blue route and then down along the yellow route to link up the turbines. The access route itself does link right up, connect right up almost to Kirkcudbright Farm, and I've got a view showing the view down south from there. Up at the access, you would have the control building, substation compound, telecommunications mast, and the temporary construction compound. This is the wind turbine elevations. It would be 150 metres to tip and 90 millimetre diameter rotor. I forgot my metres and my millimetres muddled up. It's a control building. It would be 31 metres by 13 metres, single storey, and the substation compound would be the same length, 31 metres, 9 metres wide. And the substation compound would be enclosed by dark green palisade fencing. The application also includes 4 temporary masts. These are the guide masts on the right-hand side of the screen, and 1 permanent anemometer mast on the left-hand side, and the telecoms mast, which is 10 metres high, would be located at the access. This shows the proposed upgrading to the access, which really just involves widening it and realigning the fences and dikes around the entrance. This is a ZTV, zone of theoretical visibility, doesn't take into account buildings and trees. The ZTV shows visibility over a wide area to the north, west and southwest of the site. And there are pockets of visibility right up to 35 kilometres to the north and west over to Sorby and the Isle of Whithorn. This is a cumulative map to 10 kilometres. I said, don't think my pointer's working very well today. Yeah, these are the Barcloy, and right in the centre of the image are the Barcloy turbines with the orange stars, and the 3 to the next to them are Chapman's Howe, which are still in the planning system. the green triangles here are two turbines at Cyplin that are 19 metres high, which are actually erected, and this one here is a 74-metre one at Cyplin, which was approved by the DPA and has not yet been erected. That's really most of them in the vicinity. I could be here a while, but I'll not go on. Moving on to the slides, this is looking northeast along the B727. That would be the proposed access there, which would require upgrading. Excuse me. This access was granted permission under a previous planning application in 2009. This is the view looking south from Kirkcudbright Farm. The Barcloy Hill range is on the left-hand side, and the turbines would be generally situated to the right-hand side of the track. This is a view from the B727. I've got another image of this, which the photomontage, which will show you the turbines in situ. The turbines would be spread roughly along the bottom of the hill in a line. This is a view from approximate location of turbine west, turbine 1, west towards the B727. You can't see them, but the two turbines, the two 19-metre turbines are kind of in the middle of that image, and the 71-metre turbine would be on the hill in the distance that's light green against the dark green background to the right-hand side. This is looking from approximate position of turbine to looking east. So the Barcloy Hill is on your left-hand side and looking and more settled landscape, agricultural landscape on the right. This is from turbine 2 looking towards the location of turbines 3, 4 and 5. This is a view from the U51, the small road, single track road on the southwest of the site, looking towards the ridge. This is a photo montage from Ben Gain, which is the highest hill of the ridge. I'm afraid you have to look quite closely to see that, but if you look up where it says Barcloy Hill, if you look under there, you maybe can see the turbine blades. And this is from the B727, showing the turbines. I say they're not very clear, I'm sorry for that, but it's to give you an idea of what that might look like. So, as detailed in my report at paragraphs 4.7 to 421, it's considered that there would be significant adverse landscape and visual impacts as a result of this development, and it would not be in accordance with the IPP or the wind energy policies. It's also considered the proposed development would have an unacceptable impact on residential amenity in the locality in terms of visual dominance. Consultation responses indicated an objection from NATS, as David's already pointed out, and that's given as our third reason for refusal. So in conclusion, the proposal is not considered to comply with development plan policies and is recommended for refusal as detailed in the report.
Thanks, Judith. Any members, any questions for the planning officer? Okay, thanks, Judith. In that case, we have a number of objectors and an applicant who wish to speak. The first speaker will be Chris. Yes? No problem, aye. Can you... Pardon? No, someone will present it to you there. Thanks for bringing that to my attention. The first speaker is Chris Blanton on behalf of himself and Mr. Chris Cooper. Mr. Blanton, you'll have 6 minutes when you start speaking. There are a number of objectors, and I think it would be helpful if we don't all cover the same subject. I wouldn't want to have you waste your time, and I'm certainly not trying to stifle debate, but if we could each deal with separate matters, I think that would be helpful. So When you're ready, sir, you'll have 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm a nearby resident to this proposed scheme. I'm within 2 kilometres of the turbines, as Judith mentioned earlier on. And I speak for myself and a near neighbour who's even closer to me. He's 900 metres away from the nearest turbine. I'm 1,200 metres away. First of all, I shall read out a statement from my near neighbour who would have been here, but he's away, working away. So, dear Planning Committee, I wish to reinforce my objection to the proposal to construct a 5-turbine wind farm at Barcloy Hill. My house is one of the closest to the wind turbines, and I fear that disturbance through noise, potential flicker in the early mornings will severely affect me. There will be visual impact, and the value of my house will most likely be reduced. The plan seems to ignore the generally accepted practice of siting large turbines more than 2 kilometres from habitations. All 5 are within 2 kilometres of my house, and the nearest is only 900 metres. There are many farms and cottages in the greater Minnygap district. This is not a typical higher altitude hill and moorland, where the population density is very low and of a scale that can absorb large turbines. This is relatively highly populated for a rural area in Galloway, and it's a coastal strip of low elevation proximal to the coastal towns of Dalbeattie, Kirkcudbright and Gatehouse of Fleet. Land use in the area consists of many small farms and houses. From any one house, it's possible to see several more. The size of the turbines is wildly out of scale with a subdued topography, and will therefore be injurious to the wider amenity. A construction of this size is comparable to erecting a multi-storey building in High Street, Kirkcudbright. The turbines would be over 6 times higher than McClelland's Castle. It seems certain that although 1 or 2 landowners will gain a lot monetarily, the vast amount of house owners in the vicinity will find that the value of their property is likely to be reduced, possibly rendered unsaleable. They will be subject to the negative effects of wind turbines, and they will pay higher energy bills for this through subsidies for what is a very small scheme in terms of generating capacity. People in the area visually affected by this proposal have every reason to feel strongly about it. They are being duped and are paying for the privilege. This seems to me to be perverse and counter not only to common sense but also to natural justice. I request that you reject this proposal on the grounds that it is deleterious in many aspects, both to the local amenity and local residents, and it's of totally inappropriate scale. Yours sincerely, Chris Cooper. I'll move on to my own statement. I'll just make one quick quote from the report, which I wholeheartedly endorse. That's the officer's report to committee. The site is within a settled landscape and a small number of dwellings within 3 kilometres of the proposed development will have clear direct views of the Barcloy Ridge area. These dwellings are therefore likely to experience significant detrimental visual impacts. I'm one of those. I've lived at 3 little cyclone cottages for 9 years now, spent 9 years painstakingly modernising it, chose where I wanted to live with great care, and I look out straight onto Barcloy Hill. I've got 11 windows in my house, and 6 of them look out onto Barcloy Hill. I didn't sleep last night because of the importance of this meeting and the decision that you will make in as much as it will affect my life massively. So I'm very concerned about this. It's very difficult to compress anxiety, which has lasted for 4 years. That's when the mass went up, into 3 minutes. How do you talk about how you feel over 4 years in 3 minutes? It isn't easy. But I do believe I will be very seriously negatively affected. Judith mentioned on those photographs, which incidentally I would say are quite poor. The contrast is so bad that you can't even really see the turbines, not from this side of the room anyway. I think in real life it would be much more stark than that. There are two existing 19-metre turbines within 750 metres of my house. And I didn't object when planning permission was sought for those, but I ideally wish I had. 20 metres, quite a lot of the time they're broken, but when they are turning, I hear them. And when the wind's in a certain direction, when the blades are sideways onto me, I can hear them inside the house quite clearly, and I can hear them at night when I'm in bed. So does Chris Cooper. He hears them too. He's nearer to them than me. Developers often say that you won't hear the larger turbines. Frankly, I simply don't believe that. In 4 years, we've had enough time to research these issues and talk to people who do live within close proximity of large turbines, and they do hear them, and it does worry them. And there is, albeit controversial, a growing body of evidence about the effect on people's health. And I'm worried... 30
seconds left, sir.
Sorry?
You've 30 seconds remaining.
Out of the 6 minutes?
Yep.
Yep, right. Okay. Well, who cares about people in my position? And I really do hope it's you. The developer doesn't care, I haven't been consulted, haven't been visited. And there needs to be some sort of governance process that strikes a balance between the needs of developers and residents like me, and I sincerely hope you will refuse this application.
Thank you, sir. Just before you leave the table, does any member have any questions for Mr. Blanton? In that case, we'd like to resume your seat, sir. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you.
And the same, just to remind objectors and applicants, I will remind everyone with 30 seconds to go just to draw their own presentation or views to a conclusion. The next speaker is Denise Cook. And Denise, you will have 3 minutes when you start speaking. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Denise Cook and I live at Oakleaf Cottage, which is just 1.3 kilometres from this proposed development. The Lincoln's Glen and surrounding area is a wonderful place to live, stunningly beautiful, peaceful and tranquil, worthy in itself of inclusion in a national scenic area. Local policy guidance is clear that only turbines at the lower end of medium topology are suitable in this area, which means 50 to 55 metres maximum. Barcloy Hill at 115 metres would be over twice that height. For many local residents, though, it's not just the visual impact that they're concerned about, but also the possibility that if approved, the tranquility of the area would be shattered, which for some could be for the rest of their lifetime. Back in August 2011, at a public meeting in Dundrennan, I asked whether local people will hear these turbines. RES's noise specialist, Philip King, admitted, quite simply, yes, you will hear them. Now, nearly 3 years later, we still do not know exactly what this means for those of us living close to the site. How often, for how long, and in what type of conditions will we experience this noise? I personally have walked in amongst turbines several times. RES offered to take us to a wind farm so we could stand below a turbine to hear how noisy it was. This would have been misleading, but it is not truly representative of a noise experienced further away from turbines. Neighbours don't need to go far to hear the two 19-metre turbines at Sipland, which can be heard at a distance of over 300 metres, depending on wind conditions. The issue of how the Bengain-Barcloy Ridge will impact on noise was raised, as it is known by locals to affect how sound travels in the area, but we're told that the local topography has not been taken into account. There are real concerns that noise may be channeled down the glen into the valley below. I also believe that RES have not adequately assessed the true effects on nearby residents, and the complete lack of any assessment on visual impacts on neighbouring properties show complete contempt for those of us who have to live in the shadow of this development.
You have 30 seconds left, Denise.
I thank you for listening, and I hope you firmly reject this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do any members have any questions for Denise Cook? In that case, if you'd like to resume your seat, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next objector is Janet Gibson, and Janet again will have 3 minutes when you commence speaking, Janet, and I'll remind you with 30 seconds to go.
Sited in two sensitive landscapes, this development would have many adverse impacts, classed as high, according to the Council's landscape capacity study, including visual amenity, scale, landmark features, settlement and archaeology. The new Scottish planning policy states that no wind turbines are to be placed in national scenic areas, and the nearby NSA is very small and very vulnerable to visual and landscape changes outside its boundary. Scottish Natural Heritage disagrees with the developer's method of assessment of the impacts on the NSA. Also, the NSA management strategy stresses the importance of landmarks such as Bengairn Hill, as it strongly contributes to the distinctiveness of this national scenic area. And an inappropriate scale of new development could affect this quality and important prominence. The NSA management strategy stresses that the panoramic view from Bengairn should be maintained. If development was allowed, walkers would view the Fleet Valley and Wigtown Bay from Bengairn Hill through whirling blades. Viewed from the plant nursery at Williligot, west of the site, the 5 turbines will be strung out in a row, rotating above the skyline and the RSA of Barcloy Ridge. Tourist assets would be adversely affected. According to SNH, there would be significant visual impacts on users of the Burns Heritage Trail, the B727. SNH says rotating blades will be visible above the skyline of irregular and complex low hills. SNH state that significant visual impacts are possible from all directions. Even the developer agrees there will be significant visual impacts at Dundrennan, Nilmill Bay and Twynham. It would be visible from Threave. The instant visitors walk on the path at the car park. It would be visible from Threave Castle and the key view from the top. Historical and archaeological sites are increasingly important tourist destinations in the Stewartry. The type of tourists who visit will not appreciate dwarfed trees and damaged the rural setting of the 26 nearby scheduled monuments and 16 Category A listed buildings.
You have 30 seconds left.
I ask that this application be refused and that all policy and material consideration reasons be stated. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Janet. Does anyone have any questions for Janet Gibson? In that case, oh, it's all right, Janet, thank you. That's fine. Next objector is Derek Hughes. If Derek's with us, and again, Derek, you will have 3 minutes, and I'll remind you with 30 seconds to go.
Chairman, I object to this proposal on the grounds of the impact it has on the people of Kirkcudbright and their possible job prospects. It's well known that the outstanding industry that is now prevalent in Scotland is tourism. Everything else has reduced dramatically. And it seems to me quite contrary for the Scottish Government to push, on the one hand, tourism, and quite rightly so, and on the other hand, bring about policies which will be totally detrimental in parts of Scotland. And it seems to me that the advance of these wind farms on the area right across the coastal strip of Dumfries and Galloway is really, really counterproductive. I mean, when people come to this area, they come for the landscape, for the views, for the settled nature of the area. I've lived here in Kirkcudbright for 44 years, and I've seen the town of Kirkcudbright go downhill. Dumfries, all you have to do is look, just look. You look at the way shops are empty, decay, lack of maintenance, everything. It was interesting that just at the beginning of the week, there was a report in the national press. The Scottish Affairs Committee at Westminster, I'm sure you know about this already, but they looked at Dumfries and Galloway and the borders as a group and came to the conclusion that this was an area of Scotland that has been ill, sort of not prepared, just at the receiving end of very, very little in the way of government help or any other initiatives. I looked as a comparison with the Highlands and Islands Enterprise Board, where they push and they have received and got lots of government aid to forward sort of schemes and initiatives to the benefit of the people who live there. Dumfries and Galloway and the borders have received none of that, or little of it. And I think that when you turn around and say that, this is following a visit by this particular committee, there are higher levels of unemployment and underemployment, lower than average wages, higher transport costs, poorer infrastructure, and lower levels of enterprise and economic development.
30 seconds to go, sir.
When it's recognised at national level that this is the case, then proposals like this are really, really counterproductive. Those people who are coming to Kirkcudbright and Castle Douglas and Dalbeatty and Gatehouse of Fleet and right along that strip, they don't want to see, and I'm quite sure they don't want to see, wind turbines almost 400 feet high. For God's sake, it's like going into some kind of industrial zone.
Dangerous, do you reckon?
I would encourage the committee to throw this out. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hughes. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Hughes? In that case, thank you, sir. Thank you. We now have Ray Lee on behalf of herself, Mr. Graham Lee and Barry Cooper. So Ray, you will have 9 minutes and I will remind you with 30 seconds to go.
Oh, okay. I'm reading this on behalf of Mr. Barry Cooper of Gelston, who could not be here today. I believe that a decision over a final route to the site has not been decided by the developer and will be subject of another planning application. This piecemeal approach should not be permitted. The current preferred route takes all construction traffic through Castle Douglas, down St Andrews Street, crossing both King Street and Queen Street. Both these crossroads are already very busy and difficult to negotiate. The B727 is an attractive winding drovers road and forms part of a very popular national cycle route which brings many tourists to the area. The landscape architect's report highlights that in places the road may need to be widened by up to 8 metres. The rural character of the road would be affected by straightening and widening. It is also likely that removal of the bends will lead to increased traffic speeds, which may impact on pedestrian or cycle safety, and is a concern given that this section forms part of the national cycle route. Since the initial planning application in 2012, lorry traffic has increased on the road, particularly as a result of more silaging with periods of heavy tractor traffic from early morning to late evening due to the increase in size of local industrial farms. The school has 40 pupils and is actively encouraging them to cycle to school. 7 young children walk to and from the school along the road, which has no proper pavement, has cottages close to the road and cars parked in front of houses. A high percentage of older and/or disabled people live in the village who will be put at risk by increases in heavy traffic. When 2 large lorries currently meet in the village, they are unable to pass without stopping and manoeuvring around each other. The heavy goods vehicle movement during the construction phase would increase by 376% and cause chaos on the road and raise safety concerns. The figures used by the developers in the planning application are absurd. The statistic mentioned in section 14.73 is that the capacity of the B727 would be 800 vehicles in each direction each hour if vehicles were travelling at 30 miles an hour. This may apply in theory, but in practice would be totally unworkable. The developers make no mention of the 2 public meetings held at Gelston Village Hall in 2012, where residents of the village made it very clear they did not agree with the developers' plans. There was such a high level of opposition that further meetings with the community were cancelled by the developer. I'm reading this one on behalf of my husband Graham Lee, who could not attend this meeting today. We live 1.2 kilometres from the proposed development. Quote from a local estate agent's initial valuation on our property, March 2012. The house commands a lovely rural location, although it is possible that its full value may be impacted upon by the possibility of potential wind farm development nearby. I believe the nearest potential wind farm development is a reasonable distance away and possibly out of sight from the cottage, but unfortunately every local farmer is jumping on the bandwagon and putting in applications for wind farms, which I think will have an impact on the valuation of rural properties such as yours. The London School of Economics produced a report in January of this year confirming that house prices are reduced by wind farms in the vicinity. Property values may not be a material consideration to a planning application, but the implication for the local economy is. The threat of a reduction in house value means owners will debate the wisdom of spending more money on their already devalued properties, money that would likely have gone to local businesses. With 27 properties within 2 kilometres of the site, many people are concerned about noise. Sound travels in complex ways in this location and varies with atmospheric conditions, and at certain times extraneous noise can be heard from well outside the immediate area, such as from Kirkcudbright and Dundrennan, 6 kilometres distant. The ETSU guidelines, which are used to establish permitted noise levels at nearby properties, were written 16 years ago when turbines were approximately 60 metres to tip. The Noise Working Group who wrote the document suggested that the report be reviewed in 2 years' time. With over 70 UK wind farms having noise complaints lodged against them, it is clear that current government guidance is outdated and unfit for purpose, and it does not provide adequate protection to wind farm neighbours. The Barcloy Ridge, the bowl-shaped landscape, and 3 turbines almost in direct line with each other are factors that increase the possibility of excess amplitude modulation, or AM. AM is the loud thumping noise that turbines can sometimes generate. Since 2007, when this problem occurred at only 4 wind farms, there has been a significant increase with complaints over 30 wind farms today demonstrating excess AM. A review of recent research by Renewables UK, the wind industry trade body, found that, quote, it is not feasible to reliably predict the likelihood of excess AM occurring at a particular site. RES can therefore not give any guarantees to neighbours that excess AM will not be a problem. Thank you. My statement. The Barcloy Hill environmental statement rejects the need to undertake an assessment of potential health impacts by dismissing wind turbine syndrome and stating that low-frequency noise and infrasound are not generated at levels that can harm people. There are many reports of people around the world suffering adverse health impacts due to wind turbines. It would be highly unusual for people to just abandon their homes if there weren't serious problems. Many experts recognise that the emitted noise can cause annoyance, stress and sleep disruption. Even wind industry reports concede that there are indirect health impacts through annoyance. And the World Health Organization acknowledges that this can have serious health implications, including headaches, tinnitus, vertigo, loss of concentration and cardiovascular disease. A peer-reviewed editorial by Christopher Hanning in the British Medical Journal 2012 states, quote, "A large body of evidence now exists to suggest that wind turbines disturb sleep and impair health at distances and external noise levels that are permitted in most jurisdictions, including the United Kingdom." The Ontario Environmental Review Tribunal in 2011 concluded that wind turbines can cause harm to humans and that the debate has now evolved to one of degree. The wind industry has known for over 30 years that upwind turbines produce low-frequency noise and infrasound, and as turbine sizes increase, so does the low-frequency noise component. Developers will say infrasound that can't be heard can't hear you, but pioneering research in America by Alex Salt has identified that this may not be true and more research is needed. Despite the wind industry being established for over 20 years, no epidemiological studies have been conducted to assess the health impacts on those living close to wind turbines. No one knows what the effect will be over a sustained period, especially with rapidly increasing size of turbine. Because of this shortcoming, the Barcloy application fails to meet the Town and Country Planning Regulations of 2011, as it is impossible for RES to predict the medium and long-term likely significant effects of the development on the health and quality of life of nearby neighbours. I sincerely hope the Council will support local policy and help protect local residents by refusing this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. Thank you, Ray. Any members have any questions for Ray? In that case, thank you very much, Ray, if you'd like to resume your seat. We now have Dorothy Waterworth. Dorothy, you will have 3 minutes and I'll remind you with 30 seconds to go.
I'll jump straight in. I'd like to make just a few points. The Council's wind farm landscape capacity study is absolutely clear that there's no scope for large turbines in both the Ben Gairn unit of the coastal granite uplands, where the Barcloy turbines would be erected, nor in the immediately adjacent Dundrennan unit of the peninsula landscape character area, without significant adverse effects across a wide range of sensitivities. Scottish Natural Heritage supports this position. Examination of the local development plan by Scottish Government reporters has confirmed the link to the landscape capacity study. The Council's landscape capacity study has found support from several Scottish Government reporters at appeal, along with the IPP, the Council Structure Plan, and a number of local plan policies, all of which have been cited in refusals. On current advice and policies, the Barcloy Hill scheme would conflict with the guidance of the Dumfries and Galloway Wind Farm Landscape Capacity Study and the Local Development Plan. As well, it would fail several tests of the Council's IPP, Structure Plan and Stewardship Local Plan. But that's not all. Scottish Natural Heritage, in their consultee response of 13th of March 2013 to the Barcloy Hill development, are unambiguously critical of several key points in the application and dispute various assessments of landscape and visual impact. They are concerned that the development will have a significant impact across the entire Ben Gairn unit, an adverse and significant impact on views from the landmark feature of Ben Gairn itself, and will dominate Barcloy Hill. They raise concerns about the impact on the objectives and integrity of the East Stewardship Coast NSA, and the Solway Coast RSA, exactly the compromises the new Scottish planning policy warns against.
You have 30 seconds to go, Dorothy.
Thank you. While Scottish Government policies have been supportive of wind energy, that support is not unconditional, as the new Scottish planning policy makes clear. The aim is to achieve the right development in the right place. It is not to allow development at any cost. There is simply too much evidence from a range of policy and guidance statements and a notable consultee that on the Barcloy Hill development, that the Barcloy Hill development is in the wrong place, and would come with significant costs, and not only those affecting
Can you just draw that to a conclusion, please?
Yeah, and not only those affecting landscape and visual amenity, but others referred to by previous speakers. It's my view that there is no material consideration that can outweigh these negative impacts.
Thank you, Dorothy. Any questions for Dorothy? In that case, if you'd like to resume your seat, thank you. We now have a representative of Kirkcudbright Community Council booked to speak. That person hasn't arrived yet, so we'll go on to the next speakers, and he or she arrived before the end of that time. Yes? Are you offering to help? I thought another member of the Community Council was going to attend in his place. Okay, in that case, we'll have to just pass that then. Okay, thanks very much for that information. In that case, the next speaker is Keith Mycock on behalf of Elaine and Trevor Proctor. Keith, you will have 6 minutes, and I'll remind you with 30 seconds to go.
Yes, the first presentation is from myself, and the other is a joint one from Elaine and Trevor. Okay. No doubt the applicant will stress that this development is needed to meet the Scottish Government's renewable energy target of 16 gigawatts by 2020. The D&G planning system already has just over 3 gigawatts of major wind farm development in the system, which corresponds to 19.6% of the government's target. Add to this the hundreds of smaller wind turbines, all the hydro, all the anaerobic digesters, biomass, solar roof panels, air source, heat pumps, and now solar parks, and in the future, the tidal stream proposed for the Solway. Dumfries and Galloway might soon be providing 25% of the government's targets, with 5 years still available for further applications. Dumfries and Galloway only occupies just over 8% of Scotland's landmass. I would maintain it is contributing 2 to 3 times more than its share to meet the government's target. Recent figures provided by Dumfries and Galloway show that the percentage of wind energy as a total of the renewable capacity in the county is 90%. Wind isn't the only source of renewable energy, and over-reliance on wind should be discouraged. The application is one of 3 projects proposed between the East Stewartry and the Fleet Valley NSAs, also close to the Solway Coast RSA. Unfortunately, these designated areas are small in area and will be negatively affected by wind developments close to their boundaries. SNH haven't formally objected to this proposal. This is because their guidelines limit their ability to do so. However, from the numerous negative comments they have made in their report, it is clear they have serious concerns. I will quote just one in a rebuttal of the applicant's claim that the visual impact of the wind farm will be acceptable. SNH state, "We disagree with this assessment and find that, given the prominence of the site, that significant visual impacts are possible from all directions, plus the sensitivity and popularity of Bengairn Hill as a promoted landmark feature within the NSA." The management strategy of the National Scenic Areas states, "Scotland is renowned for its high quality of landscape, a national asset. Some of the very best are in Dumfries and Galloway, attracting visitors to the region and providing the setting for where people live, work and play. These special landscapes are of substantial economic value and of great importance to our quality of life. I would ask councillors to support the D&G planning policy and your planning officers by refusing this application."
Thank you very much, Keith. Any members, any questions for Keith? In that case, we'd like to resume your seat. So.
No, I've got the...
oh, sorry. I thought you concluded. My apologies.
That was my presentation. I'm now reading the statement on behalf of Trevor and Elaine Proctor, who are unable to come today. The landscapes capacity study is quite clear that the proposal proposed site is not suitable for wind turbines of this size and states that turbines of only 50 to 55 metres may be suitable. This is supported by SNH guidance in their siting and designing wind farms in the landscape 2009, which states that the siting and design of development needs to ensure that wind farms should be of minor vertical scale in relation to the key features in the landscape, typically less than 1/3. With turbine bases at 140 metres and the Barcloy Ridge at 265, this would mean turbines should not exceed 42 metres to tip. The landscape capacity study states that development should be sited to avoid intrusion in key areas to and from the landmark hills of Bengairn and Screel, but also avoiding dominating the lower craggy ridges of Barcloy Hill and the distinct knoll and ridge of Dungarry Fort by limiting the spread of height of development. From the submitted photoman charges, it can be of little doubt that this project would have a devastating impact on Bengairn, Barcloy Ridge and across the wider area. SNH considered the impact of the view from Bengairn is adverse and significant. This is of particular concern given the significance and popularity of the viewpoint as a landmark feature within the East Stewartry Coastal NSA and the magnitude of the change it will undergo. Further, there will be an overall significant impact with the entire Bengairn unit, given the range of key characteristics that the scheme impacts upon. The only protection the people of Dumfries and Galloway have against the relentless onslaught of wind farm applications is a local policy and the landscape capacity study, so I hope that today this will be fully endorsed by yourselves. Back in 2011, SNH, in their scoping response, raised concerns that permitting the use of large turbines in this location would set a precedent for their widespread use in this area. Please do not let this happen, and we would ask councillors to support the D&G planning policy and the planning officers by refusing this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. Does anyone have any questions on the second part of the presentation on behalf of Elaine and Trevor Proctor? In that case, thank you, Keith, if you'd like to resume your seat. The next objector is John Thompson. And John, when you start speaking, you'll have 3 minutes as well. And I'll remind you with 30 seconds to go.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm John Thompson. I live within a mile of the proposed development. I'm a former director of SNH, and I've got over 30 years' experience of planning landscape and energy policy matters inside and outside government. And I remain active in the field, not least as the chair of the Scottish voluntary body's Landscape Task Force. I personally recognise that we need wind energy as part of the vital move to low-carbon living. But in my view, getting the right wind farms in the right places is the most important challenge ever faced by the planning system in rural Scotland. Wind turbines are eye-catching metal structures essentially alien to the rural landscape. They are visible over many miles and can dominate their surroundings. Badly situated, they could ruin Scotland's countryside. The Scottish Government itself has acknowledged this by ruling them out in nationally designated landscapes. To avoid this, we must have and adhere to a robust planning framework with landscape at its heart. And the key to this is scale. Wind turbines must be of a size in keeping with their landscape setting. That's what your council now has, and the crucial policies in your draft local development plan have substantially survived their recent scrutiny by reporters. In their own words, development should respect, protect and or enhance the region's rich landscape character, scenic qualities and features and sites designated for their landscape quality at any level. They should also reflect the scale and local distinctiveness of the landscape. The report has also expressly specified the plan's underpinning landscape capacity study as the appropriate yardstick for assessing landscape acceptability. As others have pointed out, that landscape capacity study leaves no room for doubt that the turbines proposed for Barcloy Hill are too big. At 115 metres, twice the maximum height that it recommends, and anybody who knows the area could surely not disagree with that. The very fact that turbines of this size could only reach the site along the B727 after major re-engineering further underlines their inappropriateness. The landscape architect in the council shares this view, so does SNH. As Dorothy has already pointed out, its assessment is, if anything, even more damning. It is true that despite these reservations, SNH hasn't objected, but as members will know, SNH now objects to planning applications only in the most exceptional circumstances, almost invariably involving a nationally or internationally designated site. Given this general policy, one can fairly say they're waving a red flag as vigorously as they possibly can. In short, this site is simply not the place for turbines of this size.
You have 30 seconds to go, John.
Approving this application would undermine the Council's carefully crafted planning policies designed to bring some order to what has so far been a wasteful and deeply divisive free-for-all. And this matters. It matters not just because everybody needs greater certainty, it also matters because Galloway is beautiful. Beautiful enough to have been recommended as a national park by the Scottish Campaign for National Parks. Despite claims to the contrary, inappropriate wind farm development would, I firmly believe, drive many of them away. That could not be good for the future of the region. It's what your council's policies are designed to avoid.
Can you just throw that to your
I urge you to follow your officer's recommendation, uphold those policies and reject this application.
Thank you, John. Any members have any questions for John? In that case, thank you, John. I'd just like to return to your seat. Thank you. And since no one appears to have arrived on behalf of Kirkcudbright Community Council, that concludes the list of objectors speaking today. We now have the applicant, John Appleton. John, if you'd like to come forward, please, and you'll get the same 3 minutes, and I will remind you with 30 seconds to go.
Good morning, my name is John Appleton, speaking on behalf of RES UK and Ireland, who are the developer of Barcloy Hill Wind Farm. RES are disappointed that the officer has chosen to recommend the committee refuse the application for planning consent based on that objection and 2 landscape issues. I'd like to take each of these points in turn. We had hoped that a decision on the project could be deferred to allow us to resolve NATS's objection. NATS have not provided sufficient justification for their objection to allow RES to evaluate the basis of their concern. Refusal by the committee at this stage would mean we can only resolve that objection through a costly planning appeal process. RES have recently received advice from an independent aviation consultant that indicates that there is a strong likelihood that the NATS objection may be overcome. We are currently discussing NATS's objection with the Civil Aviation Authority and believe that this will lead to resolution of the NATS objection. We are optimistic the objection can be removed and RES continue to work to this end. On the next reason for refusal in the officer's report, visual dominance, RES do not agree with the officer that, by virtue of the nature, size, location and resulting visual dominance, that the proposed turbines give rise to significant detrimental impacts on residential amenity. The assertion that the nature of the scheme results in a visual dominance is concerning and would indicate a presumption against wind farm development. RES have taken time to make sure the scheme has been carefully designed, with amenity being considered throughout the process. No significant effects are predicted by the environmental statement submitted by RES, and we failed to see the justification for the reason for refusal. Turning to the final reason for refusal, the officer's report cites significant impacts on the coastal granite uplands and peninsula landscape character type. Whilst the environmental statement submitted by RES does identify isolated significant impacts, the assessment did not identify these as being unacceptable. It is important to note that there is a substantial difference between significant effects and unacceptable effects. This is illustrated in the approach taken by SNH, where they identified that there would be some significant impacts, but have not objected on that basis. We believe this is further indication that the impacts highlighted in the officer report are in fact acceptable and do not warrant reasons for refusal. We request that the committee defer the decision today and visit Barcloy Hill site in order to gain further insight into the project. A site visit would allow you to reach a decision with greater perspective and all facets of the landscape matters. RES is committed to providing communities who host their projects with tangible benefits. We offer a community benefit package of £5,000 per megawatt.
30 seconds to go, John.
That includes our local electricity discount scheme. All properties within 2.5 miles of the scheme would receive £114 off their electricity bill annually. RES are confident that we will resolve the current NATS objection and ask that the committee defer the decision to allow this to happen. We also believe a site visit would prove to be a significant benefit to the committee members in making their decision. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the committee already decided not to defer. Of course, that's in their hands again at any time during the consideration process. Do any members have any questions for John at this time? In that case, if you'd like to resume your seat, sir. Thank you very much for your presentation. Members are now in session. Councillor McCaughtrey.
Meanwhile, I move the recommendations to refuse outlined on page 47.
Councillor Maitland.
I'd second that.
Any other members? Councillor McKee.
Aye, it's this SNH. They've 9 reasons. The state first, SNH, no objections. Then they give 9 objections in these papers. Now, what's the point of them taking part in these observations if they're not going to step up and say, we object? They've got 9 reasons for objecting in here, and yet overall they say they've no objections.
I'm sure David will address that matter for me.
Well, in fact, that has been addressed by a couple of the representatives. The policy of SNH is such that they can and will only object on national issues. And I think, as Mr. Thompson rightly said, if they are flagging up this many concerns on a site which is out with a nationally designated or internationally designated site, that is waving a red flag to the planning authority to read between the lines. Whilst there is no formal objection, what the text says is quite clear, and it's pretty unambiguous when you read through it, that they are near as damn it objecting to it. They can't because of their policy, but as officers we're quite capable of reading between the lines is what's being said there.
Happy with that, Councillor McKee? You're showing an opportunity. If you don't ask it now, there's no point.
Okay, on the supposition that we object, we refuse this application, and it goes to the reporter, what weight will he give to the SNH papers or response in here?
Hopefully it'll be the same as our planning officers, but that'll be up to them. We can't speculate. But I take it that's just a rhetorical question and not looking for a reply, because we can't speak on behalf of a third party. We have officers' recommendation, we have their view on the information presented to them by the statutory consultees, and we are where we are on the basis of that. If there are no other members, Gillian, will you confirm the decision of the committee, please?
Yes, Chair. A decision has been made to refuse the application on the grounds detailed in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Gillian. No 2 members have declared an interest in item 5, but before we go to item 5, I intend to call an adjournment for 10 minutes, and I would ask members to convene in the members' lounge if they'd be so kind. We will resume the committee in about 10 minutes' time. Councillor Geddes and Councillor Dick are absent because they declared an interest in this item. We have had an email, and I'm sure everybody has taken the opportunity to read that email, and it relates to this application number 5. I'll just go through the process of introducing the application first, and I'll ask David just to bring us up to date with the situation in relation to the objections that were lodged late. So, item number 5, formation of new access and hard standing area for boats, including slipway to foreshore at former Marine Lake, adjacent to the West Pier, Stranraer Harbour. The application type's full planning permission. The recommendation is to approve subject to conditions, and the case officer is Peter Barker. But before that, I'd like David just to outline exactly where we are in relation to late objections received in relation to this application.
Thank you, Chair. It's just making clear issues of process. I'm aware of emails which are alleging that a number of representations were not properly received or regarded by the Council's Planning Department. Just to make it clear, this planning application was made valid on the 30th of April this year. In addition to the required neighbour notification, the application was advertised in the Wigton Free Press on the 22nd of May 2014. We operate a practice of having a strict cut-off when that advert period expires. That expired on the 5th of June 2014. Within that time, 73 letters of objection were received. These are listed in Appendix 1 to this report in the agenda papers. You have all the names and addresses of the objectors that were timious. There were a further 67 letters of objection, mostly in a pro forma version of a poem that were signed, that were received after the cut-off period on the 5th of June. In line with council practice, and this is on the council's website, which is all clearly set out, we do not acknowledge or display on the council's website any late representations. So yes, we have received 67 objections. No, they're not online. No, they don't get acknowledged, but that is our standard practice. And any material planning issues which were actually raised in those representations would have been regarded anyway as part of the report. So there was nothing, I'm satisfied, which has been raised that has not already been given proper consideration in the report which is before you.
And can you just confirm absolutely that we have followed the process that would apply irrespective of whatever planning application the officer might have been dealing with at that time?
Yes, that's absolutely correct. As I say, it is set out on the planning comments page of the council's website. We do not acknowledge any representations now, and we will not display non-timious representations online for any application. It's not just this one.
Thanks, David. We have had an email from a local member, and we've all had receipt of that email, and we've all taken note of the content. Councillor Gilroy. Councillor Maitland.
I want to make it quite clear, Chairman, that actually I have discounted that email and I have not taken account of anything in it. I've listened to what the officer have said. So thank you. Although you're suggesting we've all taken account of what's in it, I have listened to the officer and I have not read that email. I want to make that quite clear.
I will rephrase that. As long as all members have had receipt of the email, that's fine. They can deal with it as they individually see fit. Councillor Carruthers.
That was it. You covered the very point, Chairman. Thanks for that.
Thank you. Okay. In that case, Peter, would you like to do your presentation to members, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'll just quickly run through the presentation, the slides. The application site, as some of you may be aware of, the configuration of Stranraer, lies just to the immediate west of the West Pier. The West Pier forming the westernmost boundary to the inner harbour there, where the ferry east of Easterberth and the marina is now sited. So we're just talking of a site just on the immediately seaward side of the West Pier there, and you can just see the site shaded in dark grey-brown there, and the small projection going out into the water being the actual splitway. The more detailed plans here, just showing the slipway itself, and also the shaded area behind the seawall and the footpath running alongside the back of the beach, which would be the boat storage compound, and also linking the slipway to the public highway Agnew Crescent, which is just off the bottom of the picture, is a new access road proposed to be built with a few parking spaces alongside it. Just some sort of cross sections showing the slipway. The slipway is actually the sort of like a, you know, as most of you will understand, is like a concrete ramped structure gradually descending into the water. But along the one side, it has a floating walkway, which essentially rests on the concrete when the tide's out, and obviously when the tide comes in, the walkway floats, so that it's actually like a floating jetty, which dinghies can then sort of come alongside, and obviously the whole configuration of the structure can change and vary with the state of the tide, so that dinghies can actually people can embark and disembark dinghies safely. Again, just a few cross sections of the proposal itself. The centre one being the boat storage area, which is shown to be constructed on ground that has to be slightly elevated, and it's the dark shape is a palisade fence 2 metres high. Again, there's some more cross sections of the development. Again, just in the larger context, just showing where it is in relation to the harbour. Looking at the site from the West Pier, on the immediate left, you'll see the new Coast Guard stroke Harbour Master's office. Just in front of just in the dead centre of the picture is an area of hedge forming the eastern side of Agnew Park. On the viewer's side of that is the site for the boat storage compound, and the slipway would actually go in the centre there, sort of running down the beach. Just a little bit further towards the land, looking at the beach, showing the general profile. This is the coastal footpath and cycleway at the back of the beach. The beach at the moment, because of the seasonal state of the way that the shore behaves, the beach is actually quite banked up against the wall at the moment, so that the beach level is about a metre higher than the actual path. So essentially, when the access road to the slipway is to be constructed, there will have to be like a ramp up and over the access road in the alignment of the footpath, which you now see. Again, just looking at the reverse view, just showing the general levels and general alignment of everything. Looking from the water edge back up to the footpath. Looking out to see where the slipway would reach the water's edge. This is the site of the boat storage compound in greater detail. At the moment, there's some material that's been deposited on it, which is surplus to the Stranraer wastewater treatment scheme, which has been under construction for the last couple of years, and it was left there as being useful potentially for the earthworks or the earth raising exercise necessary to construct the boat storage compound. Again, just looking at it from a slightly different angle back towards the town, just showing the material there, which is sort of waiting to be spread out. And that's it from the more landward side, looking out to sea. And that's really looking from the end of the slipway back at the town, along the alignment of where the access road, which the original block plan showed. And that's the reverse view from Agnew Crescent at the back, looking out towards the sea there. In a nutshell, that's the proposal. The arguments are fully outlined in the report. In a nutshell, it's fully compliant with the Stranraer Waterfront Master Plan, but regardless of that, it has generated significant local interest. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Any members have any questions for the case officer? Councillor McComb.
Thank you, Chair. I understand, Peter, several potential sites were investigated for a slipway, and this was the preferred site. Could you give us any background as to why it was the preferred site?
I'm sort of going back through memory here, but essentially the waterfront master plan, which was adopted a couple of years ago, it itself went through a significant design and public consultation exercise. And in fact, it was very thorough, and a lot of community groups and different interests were actually involved in the process. So at the end of the day, the sites were chosen for good technical and other reasons. Had it not been a good site, it wouldn't have been chosen. Had there been better sites, then they would have been chosen instead. But certainly, I mean, all I can really comment on is the background, insofar as a lot of work and a lot of expertise was actually involved in actually deciding on the right and the optimum site.
I can understand why you're asking the question, Jim, but remember, we're dealing with a specific planning application, and it's only this that we can consider. Well, we're not here to try and turn the clock back and discuss alternative sites, but I carry on.
No, it is simply, Chair, to establish the fact that this site was the outcome of an extensive process of consultation.
Thanks for that, Jim. Well done. Okay. Any other questions for officers? Councillor Maitland.
Yes, there is talk in the report about landscaping screening round the boat area. Could you possibly point that out? It's not completely clear from the...
Yes, certainly. I'm just trying to go... Oh, hang on a minute. The computer's frozen. Right. Sorry, which is the best one to show? Yeah, I mean, the site there, which, as you can see at the moment, the boat storage compound area, it's fairly open and exposed on three sides. The fourth side, the site facing Agnew Park, is pretty well screened by the sort of hedge, young tree boundary. And the sort of, well, my professional feeling was that to have something fairly austere looking like a palisade fence in full frontal view from three sides in a very exposed location was really something a little bit severe. So whilst there's land there that's able to be landscaped and can accommodate landscaping, then the opportunity should be taken to soften the impact of the appearance of the boat storage compound.
Councillor Maitland, satisfied with that? Thank you. Any other questions for officers? Okay. In that case, we had a speaker registered, Mr. Barry Miller, and he subsequently made contact saying he was not able to come or not willing to come, and I don't think he has arrived, and therefore we go straight into session. Members. Okay. Right, Councillor Carruthers.
Thanks, Chairman. Move the recommendations.
Okay. Any other alternative views? In that case, Gillian, can you confirm the member's decision, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this application is approved, subject to the conditions detailed in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Gillian. We come to item number 6, repainting of front elevation of building, front door, windows and railings, removal... Oh, sorry. Thanks, John. Is Councillor Dick with you, Councillor Geddes? No. Can you just have a quick look in maybe the SNP group room, please, and if he's not there, we'll just proceed. We will proceed, and if Councillor Dick comes back, we'll welcome him back into the fold. Item 6, repainting of front elevation of building, front door, windows and railings, and B, removal of internal stud partition walls and existing lowered ceilings in the basement and ground floors, and repainting of front elevation of building, front door, windows and railings at 75 Buccleuch Street, Dumfries. Application type A is full planning permission, and B, listed building consent. The recommendation is to approve A and B subject to conditions, and the case officer is Andrew Robinson. Andrew, will you take us through your presentation, please?
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yes, there's two applications to consider, being both planning permission and listed building consent, and they both relate to works, the internal alterations and repainting the front elevation of this building, which is situated on the northern side of Buccleuch Street in Dumfries town centre, close to the junction with Castle Street. The proposed external alterations relate to the front elevations, where proposals are to repaint the front wall, windows, doors and railings, and the proposed colours taken from the applicant's application form is summarised in paragraph 1.3 of the report. The stated alterations to the roof are considered to be repairs, so not subject to this consent. The internal alterations relate to the removal of timber partitions and false ceilings on the basement and ground floors. So these are the alterations to the basement. You can just make out the slight difference between the two existing and proposed floor plans, where those partitions would be removed, and also on the ground floor, which will also result in the removal of a false ceiling. Next few slides are just photographs of the outside and inside of the property. So this is the front elevation, where the building's currently painted in a light yellow to the ground floor and an off-white colour to the upper floor, with light green windows and railings. The building on the left, which is the council offices, is category C listed. These are the properties to the east which form part of the same listing as the application property, which is category B listed. And this is looking down Buccleuch Street towards the application property in the context of adjoining properties. In relation to the internal alterations, which will just result in the removal of non-original modern partitions such as these, the removal of the false ceiling will actually, which you can just see through a hatch, you can actually see the original ceiling through that, where you can see the cornicing as well. So the proposal would actually result in the opening up of the original ceiling, and it's a similar situation in the basement, so removal of these partitions, and the same with this one as well. So in conclusion, the proposed external and internal alterations are considered to be appropriate and would respect the character and appearance of the building and the conservation area, but conditions are recommended that require the exact type and colour of paint to be approved by sample under conditions to ensure their final appearance is acceptable.
Thank you, Andrew. Any questions from members for the case officer? Okay, in that case, we have an objector, the Reverend Andrew Crosby, and Mr. Lindsay did apply to speak, but he was out of time, so unfortunately he won't be heard, but he is present today. So, Reverend Crosby, if you'd like to come forward You will have 3 minutes, and I will remind you with 30 seconds to go, sir. My apologies, it does say Lordburn Community Council on our paper, so thanks for that.
It's 14 years overdue of the Dumfries Council area character appraisal, which you approved in January of this year. The Lordburn Community Council commends the document to members of the committee. We look forward to the accompanying management policies that are required with that document being completed and let's hope published within the next 14 years. I think the Community Council would like to remind members of this committee that currently Dumfries and Galloway Council does not have a conservation officer, and albeit whilst we have the greatest respect for the skills and the abilities of planning officers, there has been no input from a conservation officer in relation to this application. We welcome the restoration of the interior of the building, and we were in our discussions, we were very much aware that this was an application that we were in several minds about whether or not we should object to. I think what swayed us in the end was very simple. This is a Georgian building. It's a fairly late Georgian building. Georgian facades are based on the Palladian principle. And the Palladian principle of buildings is that when the windows should not be seen, they should recess within the facade of the building. The conservation officer, I'm sure, would have made this comment had he been in existence. And therefore, that's why traditionally windows of Georgian buildings are painted in a dark colour, not in white. Brilliant white, as we see scattered around the country now, actually only came into existence after World War II. I think some of us are old enough to remember the days before brilliant white invaded our Palladian facades. So that's the first thing we would want to draw your attention to. The colour white for the windows is completely and utterly historically wrong. Weather shield masonry paint is not breathable, and that's what the applicant wants to put on. I would remind members of the Mississippi Grill and the saga that surrounds that. So basically, really all we're saying to you as a community council, this is a good application. We're happy with most of it, I suppose. We had to object in order to make presentations in relation to specific issues. But at the end of the day, the conservation area of Dumfries will rise or fall on attention to detail. And attention to detail is important. The facade should not be painted in brilliant white. The windows should not be painted in brilliant white. The paint that's used should be suitable in conservation terms. If we as a community, and you are our elected representatives at regional level, can get these details right, then the conservation area of Dumfries will flourish.
You have 30 seconds left, sir.
A failure to get these details right will not assist the flourishing of Dumfries. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Reverend Crosby. Does anyone have any questions for Reverend Crosby? In that case, thank you very much, sir, for your presentation. Members are now in session. Councillor Thompson, then Councillor Carruthers.
Thank you, Chair. Could I just ask, does the listing description of the building specifically mention it being painted?
David?
Thanks. It doesn't actually. It was listed in 1981, and it does make mention of sash windows at number 75, but the actual windows are not listed in terms of the painting at all.
And I think Stephen's trying to get to, is it determine in the listing what colour they should be? Either Andrew or David.
There's no mention of what colour. It's just a very general description of the three properties that make up the listing. So it's both, it's number 75 and 77 and 79. I could read out the whole listing if that would be appropriate.
Do you want to read hear the whole listing, Stephen, or are you happy with the confirmation that there's no indication of specific colour? And you're happy with that, that's great. Councillor?
I think it was really just to see if there was a description in the listing that it wasn't, that the painting of it was defined there as well.
If you're happy with that response, that's good, Stephen. Ian?
Question was on type of paint and colour, but I think they've been answered with the previous question. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay. Any other members? Councillor Maitland?
I have to say I'm a little disturbed to hear that the conservation officer has gone and there is no replacement. I think members actually weren't necessarily aware of that. On that basis, would it be unreasonable for the committee to ask the officers to consider in consultation with somebody who knows? I mean, I would suggest something like the Georgian Society might be a suitable consultee. I'm quite happy to agree with the recommendation, and if we can, I'm sure the applicant probably doesn't care too much what the colour is, as long as it's clean and tidy and neat and appropriate and complies with the planning application. But what we've already agreed with in terms of our conservation area guidance suggests that we do have to use the correct colour, and we've agreed that already. So I just wonder how we can get round this without any particular difficulty, but perhaps in consultation, in the absence of a conservation officer with the Georgian Society. I'd be very happy to hear from officers what they think, whether that's reasonable or not.
I'm happy to have officers respond to that. I think what you did hear from Reverend Crosby in relation to Lordburn Community Council, by and large they're very pleased that the property is being maintained to a high standard, and I think that's important for the whole of Dumfries. But Andrew, do you want to just respond to that?
Yeah, the comments about the conservation officer are noted. So as officers, we've had regard to other policy guidance that's available on the subject. There's no policies which stipulate exact colours to be used in it has to be on a case-by-case basis. There is some information, very useful information from Historic Scotland, who have what they call managing change in the historic environment guidance notes, and what they state about the finish of windows is that most window frames were traditionally painted. In terms of the dates, it actually says whilst light colours were widespread in the 18th century, which are common now, many mid to late 19th century timber windows were painted in dark colours, including red, green, blue, brown, black or grey. So there's an acceptance that windows were on certain buildings traditionally in a black, but they're also light colours as well. We just have to look at this as a case on its merits. Are white windows unacceptable on a listed building? They have been commonly done that way, whether right or wrong, since the 1920s, 1930s, and that's recognised in many towns and cities in listed buildings across Scotland.
Thanks, Andrew. And happy to come along, Councillor Layton, if that will satisfy all members. But if you look at the council offices in Buccleuch Street, the windows are white. Councillor Gilroy.
Well, that doesn't make it right, Chairman. And
nor does it make it wrong. I'm not going to get into that today. Can you just come to your point, Councillor Gilroy?
well, I would actually, I'm with Councillor Maitland on this, and I think we all want to see this building used, tidied up, everything. I think we're all in agreement with that. But we've got it done, got to do it properly, because Buccleuch Street's a main street for the town. It's the entrance. Quite a lot of people come in, and it would be appropriate. And there's no reason why we shouldn't do it properly and correctly. And I think we need to take the proper advice from, if there is such a somebody within Heritage, Scottish NSH or SNH, or indeed the Georgian Society, which would be the appropriate thing, and just get the right colour.
And I think the report does say in consultation, and remember, at the end of the day, we decide, I mean, irrespective of who you might wish to consult, there's still officers that have to make a decision. So I'm happy to have officers go and consult if that satisfies members. Absolutely.
Yes.
Hey, Councillor Gilroy, are you happy with that? Councillor Thompson.
Thanks again. It was just a note on the paint, the masonry paint. The infamous Mississippi Grill application, when we did have a conservation officer, made great reference to lime wash and microporous paint systems that complies with, let me just check, Structure Plan Policy E9 and Local General Plan Policy 51. And that was specific, that had to be quite prescriptive in terms of what the masonry paint. So it was just really to get that clarity on the type of paint that was going to be used, and if there's any more detail on that.
Again, I'm sure officers having regard to the Mississippi Grill will have dealt with that properly, but it does make reference in the report that it would be subject to approval by officers. But again, Andrew will tell you what's going on with that.
Yes, the proposed condition is worded precise type and colour of paint as part of type of paint. We'd be looking at those issues.
Councillor Geddes.
Well, I would move so that the applications be granted on the basis set out in the case officer's report.
Okay. Councillor Grimm.
Quite happy to second Councillor Geddes.
Councillor McKay.
I think as Councillor Conroy suggested, it might be the time to get it right, and if the municipal chambers has got it wrong the next time it's done, it can be done correctly. And the other windows going further up the street can be addressed at the same time, I suppose.
There is no suggestion, in fairness, or allegation that the council have got the paint in the Buccleuch Street windows wrong. I was simply saying, if you look at the images currently, they are white. Anyway, we have now a proposal and a second. The agreed officer's recommendation as set out in the report. Are there any alternative views? In that case, Gillian, if you confirm the decision, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the application has been granted, subject to the conditions outlined in the report. Thank you.
Now come to item 7. I take it Councillor Maitland's leaving. Erection of industrial building class 5 at Kellwood Engineering, Unit 9, Catherinefield Industrial Estate, Dumfries. The application type is planning permission in principle. The recommendation is approved subject to conditions, and the case officer is Claire Eckstein. Before we ask Claire to do a presentation, we have received some of us an email from Jamie Maitland, or James Maitland, and David, would I just like to address that, please, before we go into the report?
Thank you, Chair. We've also received a letter from the agent, David Fallis, to Claire Eckstein. They're both basically saying the same thing. They are requesting an additional word in condition 7. David's letter says it's in the interests of clarity and precision. They would like the extra word materially. So it's the phrase would actually read to, this is condition 7, which will be on page 96, is that right? 96, yep. So the way they would request the condition be worded is to ensure that the noise from the development at the site boundary does not materially exceed existing survey noise levels unless alternative mitigation measures have been agreed in writing with the planning authority in consultation with environmental standards. That's obviously a matter for yourselves to determine if you wish to add that in. My own opinion is adding the word materially actually doesn't make things more precise or clear. Adding the word materially then throws an element of subjectivity. If it is as recommended, you have definite noise levels to be exceeded. Obviously, as officers, we're going to act responsibly, and if a threshold is 45 and it comes in at 45.1, we're not going to serve any enforcement notices. But nonetheless, it is a precise condition the way it's drafted at the moment, and my opinion is adding the word material in does not actually improve the precision or clarity, but that's obviously a matter for yourselves as a committee to take on board.
I'm sure when we come to the determination, we can then just visit that, but it was important, I think, that we heard at the outset that that correspondence has in fact been received. So now, Andrew, Claire, if you'd take us through your presentation, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just an update for paragraph 1.7, just to say that the appeal for the joining site for the former college site has been received, and it's been submitted to the DPA at the beginning of July. So that was just an update on the background. So the proposal is for planning permission in principle for a Class 5 industrial building within the Kellwood engineering site at Catherinefield Industrial Estate in Dumfries. This shows an aerial photograph of the site, identifying it, and then this is a more detailed view of the site, with the application site in the centre, Kellwood engineering to the left, and the former college site in the top left-hand corner. This shows the location plan of the application site and the land also in the ownership of the applicant marked in blue. And this is an illustrative plan, site plan of the proposed building, but at the moment the application is for planning permission in principle, so we obviously don't have the final detail of it. So this shows the entrance to the site of the existing industrial site road. There is a condition requiring the widening of the access road which runs along the side of the yellow brick building. And then panning right from the previous photograph. And then this is looking down the access road towards the industrial estate road. And then panning left from the previous photograph, panning left again, and again. And then this is looking across the site from the northeast towards the sort of Kellwood engineering building. And then panning right from the previous photograph. And this just shows the boundary at the rear of Kellwood engineering backing onto the former college site. And it was for the proximity of this that the noise survey was requested, because it was obviously a class 5 industrial use and there could potentially be houses on that location. So the key issues in considering this proposal are outlined in the report, and in particular the issue of noise as noted in paragraphs 4.7 and 4.8. The report notes that in order to ensure that there is no measurable increase in noise levels on the site boundary, particularly with the former college site, from this proposed new industrial unit, the recommendation by the applicant's noise consultant, and which raised no objection from the Council's Environmental Standards Officer, have been included as a planning condition, so that if a future detailed application is submitted, then these measures are incorporated into the final design and layout. It is also considered sufficient to ensure that the noise levels at the mutual boundary do not increase and sets a level should more noise-sensitive properties be built on the former college site, and where the proposed layout, subject to an appeal, has been assessed against. The proposal is considered to accord with the development plan policies, and the recommendation for approval, subject to conditions, is noted.
Thank you, Claire. Any questions for the case officer? Councillor Hislop.
Just for my clarification, could you detail what is the actual mutual boundary? Is it boundary between this site and Mr Maitland's own site? Is it the boundary between this site and the former college site, or is it all of Mr Maitland's business area and the college site? I think that, because that was my reading of where they wanted the change, was to specify to just the site that's being applied for just now.
Right. If you can see on this drawing here, where the sort of main building is, just immediately to the northwest, there's a red line running there, and there is actually a small gap, which is also in the ownership of the applicant.
Chair, that one probably shows it slightly better. It's slightly washed out on the screen, unfortunately, but the actual application site is that boundary I'm trying to draw a line along there. The blue line boundary, which is the ownership, runs right around here and wraps round, so it's wholly enclosed within the actual overall unit, and from above that shows the area that's involved again.
There is actually a sort of 5 metre gap between what would be the mutual boundary with the proposed former college site. And you see that gap there, that just in there, that's sort of 5 metres.
Councillor Hislop.
So the mutual boundary is between Mr Maitland and Mr Maitland, because that is the site, rather than the college site.
David?
Yes, that's right. The application site is wholly enclosed within the existing industrial site, so there is a buffer between the actual college site.
Councillor Dick?
Thanks, Chair. Just to be absolutely clear, this is an agreement in principle. Consequently, we don't need to have too much concern about the objection from the Council Roads Officer at this stage. That would be presumably for a full development at a later stage.
David?
Yes, Chair, that's correct. I mean, there probably are valid concerns being raised by roads as a result of the illustrative plan that you see before you, because the constraints of the site are such that on this illustrative plan, there really isn't sufficient parking and turning space within this area. But because this is marked as an illustrative plan only, and it's recommended for approval subject to conditions that appropriate parking and turning be within, the concern that's really been flagged up is to do with the fact that this is a freestanding proposal and therefore arguably could be sold off for a different developer. Obviously the applicant here is Kellwood Engineering, but planning permission runs with the land, so in theory it could be sold off, and it wouldn't be acceptable to have a freestanding development of the scale shown there without adequate parking and turning facilities within the site, hence the reason for the conditions. But in short, no, I think as is a planning permission principle, we can deal with conditions, and therefore the objections of the Roads Authority can be overcome.
Thanks, Ian. Councillor Gilroy? Okay. Councillor McComb and then Councillor Thompson.
Thanks, Chair. If I could just go back to condition 7, the noise issue. Would it be helpful if the words "from the development" were to be inserted so that it read, "to ensure that the noise levels from the development at the mutual boundary did not exceed existing surveyed levels"? Would that clarify matters any?
We can revisit that at the end, Jim, because if we get to the stage where we're going to make a determination at that stage, we can address that. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. It was kind of on the same point, just to do with what David was talking about in terms of a freestanding site. And given that at the moment the mutual boundary is between two sites under the same ownership, effectively, having the word mutual, you know, should that change, which is all entirely possible, if not likely, then you would have a position where that particular site would have responsibility from the noise that could be generated from the other site at the mutual boundary. Or, you know, it doesn't explicitly say that, do you know what I mean? So it was just really to get that clarity, and it touches on what Councillor McComb was saying there as well, so a bit of clarity in that, I think. But if we're going to be coming to that at the end anyway.
I think we're still at questions for officers, though. So if it's just a question, that's fine. If it's a debate, we'll get that in the next stage in the process. Is it a question, or are you happy to let it hang until we come to determination?
I suppose it's a question because the change of words was brought up within the first part of the...
In that case, Claire will answer it. Or David will.
Having a debate.
Yes, I mean, we're reading it again and accepting that there is in fact that 5 metre buffer. I can appreciate that there perhaps will be some benefit in revising that wording. I still have the same reservations about this materially exceeding bit. I think with the mutual boundary issue, where it's a site within a site, yes, that could be enhanced.
And if we get to a stage where we're about to approve that, can the enhancement be done so that members are aware of what they're agreeing now? Okay. Any other questions for officers? In that case, members, we're in session. Members? Councillor Geddes? And then Councillor McCauley.
I would move that it be granted on the basis set out, subject to the further discussion in relation to condition 7, sir.
Thanks, Alistair. Councillor McCauley.
Happy to second that. I think we'd be tidying up a wee bit of an eyesore there when you see the photographs. I think the folk in the week were quite happy to have that site tidied up somewhat.
Okay, so David will try and get a form of words, and we also have to deal with the request and the wording from David Fallis or from Jamie Maitland. So if we can maybe get that all tidied up in one go, that'd be fine. So I take it it's condition 7 we're dealing with in respect to that. Is it the same one that that Ian and Stephen asked on? And if that's the case, can you try and do something, David, please?
I think, in fact, the wording that the agent is proposing, minus the word materially, would work very well. Is to ensure that the noise from the development at the site boundary, so you're taking a word the way mutual, does not exceed existing survey noise levels unless alternative mitigation measures have been agreed in writing by the planning authority in consultation with environmental standards. So it's kind of a hybrid between what's in 7 and what's being recommended, but I think that would tick all the relevant boxes, actually.
Thanks, David. Councillor Geddes?
On that basis, sir, I would suggest that we agree to Mr Sutty's suggestion and amend condition 7 to that extent.
Councillor McCosh, are you happy with that? Any alternative views? In that case, Gillian, can you confirm the committee's decision, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the application will be approved subject to the conditions detailed in the report, and in relation to condition 7, the amendment as stated by Mr Sutty, the planning officer.
Members happy with that? Thank you. Go to item 8. Erection of extension to rear dwelling house and installation of air source heat pump at Inishowen, Castle Douglas Road, Dumfries. And with a member, Councillor Maitland, to come back to the committee. Thanks, Councillor Maitland. Item number 8, erection of extension to rear of dwelling house and installation of air source heat pump at Inishowen, Castle Douglas Road, Dumfries. The application type is full planning permission. Recommendation is to approve unconditionally, and the case officer should have been David Cartmill, but David Sutty's taken us through this today. David, just give your presentation, please.
Yes, the case officer's in America just now, so I'm going to bring him back for the one application. This is an application which is a committee purely because the applicant is a member of the planning staff. The site sits to the north of the A780, which is the Castle Douglas Road. It's just opposite a garden centre, as many of you will know. The land is open to the north and the east, as you can see from the plan here. Probably a case of spot the difference on this one. This is the existing situation, and that's the proposed. So you can see that there's a couple of outbuildings on the left-hand side to the northwest would come away, and a centrally located single-storey extension to the rear would go in. It's a traditional single-storey property just now. What's proposed is to add on a single-storey extension to the rear. It would be clad with slates on the roof and vertical timber boarding, which is, it's not the same material as the rest of the building, obviously, but it is regarded as a sustainable finish, and it is also hidden well away to the rear, as you'll see from photos later on. The hatched areas here are the ones which would be demolished, so you've got an existing shed and a lean-to extension would come down, and that's the footprint of what would go back in for a new bedroom and a study. The house is actually very well screened from the public road, so you would be unlikely to see the rear extension that's proposed at all from the public domain. That's the access going in. The brick-built outbuilding you can see in front of you, that would be demolished. That's more close-up of it. And the extension would be extending to the rear 90 degrees to the house, so it's on the left-hand side of the slide. The rear garden is well enclosed and screened. This is another photo of the rear. So in summary, there's no objections from third parties. Whilst Environmental Health are recommending the attachment of a condition about the air source heat pump, which would go on the side of the house, For the reasons set out in paragraph 4.12, it's considered that would be an unnecessary condition and therefore actually fail the tests of necessity for conditions. Overall, it complies with council policy and is therefore recommended approval unconditionally.
Thanks, David. Any questions for the case officer? There are no objectors or representations. So, begin to session. Members, happy to agree with the recommendation? Thank you. Gillian, can you confirm the decision, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the decision has been made to approve the application unconditionally.
Thanks, Gillian. Item 9, an appeal decision for information and noting only. Members, happy to do that? And item 10, an appeal decision for information and noting only. Members, happy to note that? Thank you very much for your attendance. No further business today.
So, just before we leave, sir, it's going back to the issue of the conservation officer. I must confess I was aware that he had retired because I was in correspondence with him shortly before he did retire. But I think, bearing in mind the legitimate concerns which have been expressed by Councillor Maitland in particular,